200 billion euros are frozen inside this building. Not gold, not a vault. Numbers in a database, in an office block you would walk past without looking up. In May, a Moscow court ordered the company that runs that database to pay Russia around $250 billion, the largest damages award in Russian legal history. The trial was held behind closed doors. The company is Euroclear. It safeguards over 43 trillion euros for central banks, pension funds, and governments. Almost nobody has heard of it, and here's the part nobody tells you. The system Euroclear was built to serve was shaped by the Soviet Union, deliberately, to escape exactly this. Russia helped build the machine. 70 years later, it closed on Russia. (1956). To force Britain out of Egypt, Washington threatened to sell off the pound and block its IMF loan. No shots, just money, used as a weapon against an ally. Moscow was watching. The Soviets held dollars and every one of them sat inside American banks, where they could vanish with a signature. So on the 28th of February 1957, they moved $800,000 into the Soviet-owned Moscow Narodny Bank, registered in London under English law. The dollars never left North America. The London bank simply redeposited them into American banks. Physically, nothing changed. Legally, everything did. America cannot seize what it has no claim on. Those are widely considered the first Eurodollars. Dollars living outside American law. A confidential CIA memo from 1975 confirmed the motive in plain words. Communist banks kept their money in Europe because it was, quote, less likely to be blocked. That fear built a market. Offshore dollars flooded London. Then came the bonds, printed on paper and carried between banks by hand until the paperwork collapsed under its own weight. (1968). Inside the Brussels branch of Morgan Guaranty Trust, an American bank builds a system so Eurobonds change hands as ledger entries, not certificates in a briefcase. They call it Euroclear, the world's first international central securities depository. Brussels was picked almost at random because British law required Eurobond papers to be signed outside the UK. The most important building in European finance sits in Belgium because of a paperwork rule. In 1972, Morgan sold it to 120 of its own biggest users. Owned by everyone, controlled by no one. Neutral by design. And that neutrality is the entire product. Euroclear just records who owns what. If the record is not neutral, it is worthless. Remember that. By the end of 2025, it held over 43 trillion euros, growing for 13 straight quarters. And in the middle of it sat one client account, the Central Bank of Russia, protected since 1989 by a treaty guaranteeing those assets against expropriation. That treaty is still in force today. February 2022. Russia invades Ukraine. Within days, the G7 freezes its central bank reserves, around 260 billion euros worldwide. The US Treasury froze about 5 billion. 5. Then Belgium. Over 193 billion euros in one company, in one small country. Nobody planned that. It happened because Moscow had spent 50 years parking its money where America could not reach it. And the frozen cash kept earning. Billions in interest a year. The EU made a call. The principal belongs to Russia, but the profit is a byproduct of the sanctions, so it took the profit. Since 2024, Euroclear has handed over 6 billion euros to Ukraine. Russia calls it theft. And then Brussels asked the question that broke everything. If we can take the interest, why not the 200 billion itself? December 2025. 27 leaders, one table, a 210 billion euro loan for Ukraine, backed by Russian money. Kyiv was months from running out. One man said no. Belgian Prime Minister Bart de Wever. His logic was cold. If sanctions ever collapse, Euroclear owes Russia $200 billion it does not hold as cash. And if Moscow wins under that 1989 treaty, Belgium pays. Alone, he was not bluffing. Days earlier, Fitch put Euroclear's AA rating on negative watch over the plan. Euroclear itself warned the scheme contained, quote, "a great deal of legal innovation. In banking, that is a threat and a suit." They argued through the night, and 27 leaders backed down. They dropped the loan and borrowed $90 billion on the open market instead. Weeks later, Fitch lifted the watch. One Belgian company almost nobody has heard of had bent a continent's foreign policy. Forget the $43 trillion. That belongs to clients. Look at Euroclear Bank's own balance sheet. 237 billion euros. Of that, 200 billion is sanctioned Russian assets. 84%. The company that guards the world's savings is, on its own books, mostly Russia. That is not a company holding a hostage. It is a company handcuffed to one. And the retaliation is real. Moscow's judgment is enforceable, so Russia can now hunt Euroclear's assets in countries that never signed the sanctions. China, the Emirates, Kazakhstan. By some reports, it has already seized around 33 billion euros of Euroclear's clients' money. So the company built to be neutral is now suing a central bank in Brussels to void the ruling. Here is what actually hangs on it. Euroclear works only if a government in Riyadh or Beijing believes money left in Brussels is safe from politics. Seize the principle and that belief dies, and the world's reserves start looking for another address, which is exactly what the Soviets did in 1957. They did not protest, they moved. And in moving, they helped build the very system now holding their successors' money hostage. Because you do not own your money, you own an entry in someone else's ledger. And whoever keeps the ledger, keeps you. If that unsettles you, subscribe. The next hidden empire we open keeps a ledger too. It decides which ships are allowed to sail. You have never heard of it either.